Okay, so the first thing we're going to go over here about modules and importing, exporting. We have to create a package.json file to allow us to do the examples here with Node. So I'm just going to create a new package.json file here. And in it, all that actually is required for this example is to specify that we are using the type and of module. So this will allow us to do our exporting and importing of the modules. So straight off, what can we export? So we can export pretty much anything you want. We can export any variables, any functions, any classes. We can also export any pure functions as well. So what we'll do here is we'll just do a simple array export. So names, I'm gonna do Homer and Marge. Okay, it's just straightforward enough, nothing overly complex there. The main keyword we're using here is export, and then when we move over into our import file, so what we're just going to do here is we're going to use the import keyword, and we're going to do a named import, so we know it's names from our export.js file. And we're just going to do a console.log of those names so that we can see the return value. So you'll notice also that since I'm explicitly naming the export here by doing export const names, we are required to use the curly braces here as the import syntax. So this is for a named import here. So it's a named export from the export file, a named import from the import file. Node import. So what you see here now is our names array being listed out in the console.log. So next thing that we can try is just a basic function. So export const export function, we'll call it say hello. We're going to pass it in a name, and we're going to return a string hello. We're going to use a string template actually here, it's just a little bit easier. Hello name. So this will return us a straightforward string, which is nice and simple. What we're also going to do is we're going to create the pure version of this as well. So export const say hello pure, just for the ease of naming and explanation of the same parameter here. We're going to return the exact same. With just a pure text at the end, just so that we can differentiate when we're looking at our console logs. So here we're also going to do a named import, because as you can see here we're doing a named export. So we have say hello and we say hello pure. So I'm just going to tag them on here, say hello and say hello pure, and you can see here the IntelliSense can pick it up from the exporter function of that export file. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a console log. We're going to do say hello Bob, and we're going to do a console log say hello pure Thomas. Okay, so I'll run the same node import. So we've got Homer and Marge printed out as before, and now we have hello Bob, and we have hello Thomas, which is the pure function. So the next example I'm going to do is for exporting a class. So export class person. We're going to have a constructor here. gonna have name, I'll have this dot name equals name provided. Okay, so again, this is also a named export, so how we're going to import it is just to tack it on here again, person. So we're going to create a new person. We're going to const my person equals new person providing a name. I'm going to call them Jim, and we're going to do a console log of that my person name. Person.name. Okay, so now what we should expect to see is Jim printed out below along with the other items. So as you can see, Jim, perfect. Okay, so those are all the examples of the named exports individually, as you can see all the way down. What we're also able to do is to group them together if we want to actually do the export at the very end of the file. So what we can do is we can type in names, say hello pure, and person, and we can remove the individual declarations there. So all we've done there is just make them declared as normal variables of functions and class names, and then done the export at the very end. So what we can see here now, when we do our node import, nothing has changed for the import file. For importing, they're all named imports, and the use cases here and the console logs are all the exact same. Okay, so the next thing to have a look at would be the default export. So a file can only have one default export, but it can have multiple named exports. So when it comes to the default export, typically you would use it for a library. You might want to be able to access all the values within it using one name. You generally don't mix the named export and the default export kind of flows, but we will do that here just for example purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an export with the default, and I'm going to remove the person from the named exports here. So we're doing a regular export, but we're adding in the keyword default here. So this does impact the importing. So when we want to do an import of a default export, we have to do that outside of the curly braces. So within the curly braces are only for the named exports, and the outside of it is for the default name. So this should now work as before, and it should produce Jim as the name here. Okay, so the mistake I made there was I did not remove it from the named exports. So we go again. Perfect, we see that there now. Now there is also a way to import using the as keyword and the default keyword if we want to change the name of the import here. So you see here it's specifically named person, but what we can do is we can actually import this using and use it in our file as a different name. So say we want so we know it's a default import, so we use the keyword default. So we're importing the default as, and we're going to say my default person. Okay, so the keyword here default lets us know that we want the default export from this file, and the as keyword lets us know that we want to actually change whatever this default is from person to whatever we list out here. So it'll be my default person. So the change that we have to make to our file then is here to update my default person, or my update from person to my default person. So now everything should work as before, and it does. Perfect. That is everything about module exports and imports.